Okay, everybody online, we're getting very close. We are now live streaming, so be aware of that. We'll go mute for another moment. Well, actually, I think we're about ready to start. So to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Blair. Good morning. My name is Chris Caius. I'm chairman of the Administration Committee for Kane County, and the time being 10:18 or so, we're going to call this meeting to order for Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. Can we have roll call, please?
Martin,
Martin present.
Berman,
Berman here.
Bourbon.
Berman here.
Thank you. Davis,
Davis here.
Ford, Froz,
Here.
Gums,
Tom's here.
Pirog, Shepro, Caius.
Caius present. Great, thank you. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from July 14th, 2021?
Raz moves.
Froz moves.
Martin seconds.
Was that Martin? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I did.
Martin second.
I think there were two or three of us.
You got that? Okay, roll call, please.
Berman,
Or actually,
Yeah.
is there any comments before, any changes? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Froz,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Approved.
Okay, I believe that our financial reports are attached. There's no verbal report. So, and then item number 4 is public comment. And I understand we have some public who want to comment. And the list is, I'm not sure, do you want to go first, Paul or Sherilyn? Sherilyn's going to go first. And would you go ahead and step up to the microphone, introduce yourself and give us your address, and then you have 3 minutes, if that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Sherilyn Cameron and
Go ahead and speak right into the microphone if you can.
okay. My name is Sherilyn Cameron and we live at 3810 Ridgepoint Drive. Yeah, and I am speaking to the new business 10A regarding the solar panel project. We have some current concerns regarding this, and I've sent some emails and letters to some of the board members and mostly to Ivy, who's been forwarding those on to me. But in thinking about this, I'm prioritizing some of my concerns a little bit differently. My concern today is about the health and safety of living so close to a huge solar farm. The other concerns are about the aesthetics of the project, which is also important. But I'm needing reassurance, I think, from the county board members or whoever's going to sign any kind of contracts, that they are certain that there's not going to be any adverse health effects living so close to a solar farm. I typically see huge solar farms out in farm fields or areas not near where people are living. I see solar panels on houses, and that seems very different to me than this huge project that's being proposed. And part of my concern is that Kane County does not have a solar energy ordinance. So I feel like there's probably a lot of protection in an ordinance, a lot of thought to studies being done on things. And being that Kane County doesn't even have one, it feels like we're skipping some steps. I'm comparing it to what DeKalb County is doing with solar companies. They have like a 14-page solar energy ordinance. So there's a lot of stipulations in there that the solar company has to recognize and abide by. I don't understand who's going to be overseeing this solar project here in Kane County if we don't have something like that. Will it be the board members, whoever signs the contract? Are they going to be responsible to make sure that the solar company is doing this project correctly? I don't want the only voice in this to be the solar company's voice, because they have obviously have a huge vested interest in this. I guess maybe an example that I could give about, was that my time?
No.
Oh, okay. I guess I could give an example of DeKalb County's, this is not their ordinance, solar ordinance, but this is just an example of all the things that the solar company and the citizens have looked into. Is that my time? Oh,
That was your time. Go ahead and just
Okay.
finish quickly if you can, please.
Okay, they've looked into decommissioning plan. I'll get back to that in a minute. Glare studies, noise studies, property impact, transportation access, just a whole list of things. And maybe I'm not aware of what's gone into this project, but from the short notice that I've had, I feel like there's so many unanswered questions. Like, do we know how far the first house is from the first solar panel? How do I know that this is going to be a safe thing for me to live by? It's not just solar panels on a roof. It's a huge, massive project. We just got this postcard in the mail notifying us about this project happening. I know it's too small to see, but it's huge black panels, elevated black panels that go almost up and down Brisher Street. I don't feel safe living next to that unless the county board members can assure me that there's not going to be any health effects to that.
Okay.
I don't know if there's radiation. There's just so many unanswered questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Could I just say one more thing in
Certainly.
closing? I'll just
Go
skip
ahead.
to my closing, and that was just that I thought, I didn't know if something was going to be signed today with the solar company, and I just don't want you to sign something that would lock us into this without having more study. And I also don't want the failure of our legislature signing an energy bill to be the reason why we decide not to do this project. I wanted the reason to be that our community has studied this so well that the uncertainties of the potential harm to our citizens in any way caused us to choose a different path. Oh, my voice sounded so nervous. I apologize.
That's all right. Thank you.
done.
It was clear enough. We understand. Thank you for your comments. And then Paul, will you please step up and again, name and address?
My name is Paul Cameron. I also live at 3810 Ridge Point Drive in Geneva. So thank you for the opportunity to address you all. As you heard my wife, she has some concerns, but separately, there are a lot of aesthetic issues that a great many number of our neighbors that live in Ridge Point, Prairie Ridge rather, and Fisher Farms are going to be impacted by with this proposed project. And I'd like just to try to speak to some of that. The nature of our neighborhood is we live on a fairly severe elevation grade. So where you come into our homes from the street level, by the time you walk straight through our home to the back of our homes, you're at a second floor level in most other homes. So our sight lines to this are already elevated, let alone people that have second floors even above that. And I guess my concerns are that the landscaping plans don't seem to be being addressed very sympathetically to our point of view in terms of our sight lines and how it's going to impact our day-to-day lives. You know, they talk about this bermed area, the north berm, and I'm not sure really what makes up the south berm. It may be just a little slight ridge closer to the road, but this larger north berm is quite a bit off the ground. And I think from what we learned at the last meeting, it's really just excess land material from the building of the jail and the courthouse that has just been piled up. Subsequently, there's plants growing on it, and aesthetically, it's not bad, but it's quite high off the ground. And I think the intent, as was described at the last meeting, was to only take that down 15 or 20 feet and then add solar panels on top of it. That doesn't make sense to me why you would try to have, the footprint of this is large. It goes all the way from Peck Road on the west, all the way down Brisher to, I assume, where your property line ends on the east side. So it's going to be a big footprint. Why that isn't just going to be a level leveled off and then landscaped to provide some relief from the sight lines that we are going to see it from, anybody driving down Brisher are going to see, isn't being considered. They seem to be clinging to this landscaping plan that was put in place when the property was developed for the county and the jail facilities, and that this berm was included in that. Really, this just needs to be leveled. And I think if you could level the whole site, use maybe some of that material to berm up the sight lines from Brisher Road, and then plant some landscaping there, most of our neighbors would not have issue with this, assuming it's safe. So it's really this aesthetic sightline that there doesn't seem to be a lot of attention being given to that right now. I understand the financial impact of this and the importance of that, but there are some aesthetics to being a good neighbor, and I'd appreciate some thought given to that piece of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And then Mr. Mead, I have your name here, John Mead.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm here to speak on agenda item 10A as well, as the Camerons did. I'm not on the board, but I did speak to some of our HOA board members who all happen to be either working or out of town, so they're not here, but they're all supportive of these issues and are advocates for addressing these with the county board. I want to just stress that now's the time to get this right in the design phase. This is probably needed, and it will be a great benefit to the county and the campus that it's going to power. But now's the time to get it right and be good neighbors. As Paul indicated, we have a rolling terrain out there, and the homes are already elevated above, and then their second floors are their main living floor. So they already look down on this and almost look down on the berm. So now's the time to maybe consider eliminating the berm altogether, balancing the site, and maybe using that dirt to build a meaningfully landscaped berm along both Brisher and Peck if there's enough dirt. But that could then be heavily landscaped with some pine or whatever that would provide a meaningful visual barrier for the neighbors. And I heard some conversation about fencing, and fences are probably required to protect whatever valuables are inside these solar panels. I would encourage the fencing to be placed then on the inside of the berm, so it's not visual. If it's chain link or something, it could be effectively hidden on the north side of the berm along Brisher, so that it can serve its purpose, but also not be something that the neighbors look out as they're having their morning coffee or evening soda, whatever. But I think that considering those things in the design phase and maybe making those conditions of approval would be something worth considering at the board level or at your committee level. It's just something that, if we build them on top of the existing berm or a slightly reduced berm, it's done. It'll never change. Now's the time to get it right, balance the site, level it, and provide good power for the county facility, but also be a good neighbor to the neighborhood most affected. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, John. Excuse me. Okay. Are there any other comments? Thank you for coming. Thank you for making comments. Comment? Can you please state your name and your address, please?
Sure. Dave Pollock, 169 Arbor Avenue in Sugar Grove. I'm here to comment about 10B. I read the article in the paper yesterday about your Verizon bill. I do work with T-Mobile, and I did work with Verizon for about 10 years before I made the switch. I have been in communication with Roger for the past several months, but I know the last 16 months have been extremely busy for him. But I would like to point out that with all the devices that were found to have no use, that's solely on the responsibility of your current provider. There shouldn't be any impact on Roger whatsoever. When I worked at Verizon, when I met with my customers, I did quarterly business reviews. And one of the things I would have noticed was the abundance of lines that were not being used. And when I brought it to your attention to cancel these lines if they weren't needed. T-Mobile does have a program. When I originally talked to Roger, it's going to save the county on a rough estimate over $40,000 a year. So I would like to do is just to see if I can get some time with Roger or Auditor Wegman, just to let them know what T-Mobile has to offer for the county. What happened with your current provider is unacceptable. being a resident of the county and knowing that my tax bill is due in a few weeks, I'm looking for every way possible to save money. So all I ask is for an opportunity to meet with the powers that be, just to let you know what T-Mobile can do and to see if we're a viable solution for you. So Trustee Frost has my information, so does Roger. So I just want to say thank you for your time and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else here in the chamber who'd like to speak? Or anyone online? Hearing none, seeing none? We'll move on. Thank you again for attending and thank you for letting us know your positions on this. Facilities management, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, sir. A quick announcement. As it was mentioned earlier, there are a lot of power outages and issues throughout the King County area. This building is fully protected by the backup generator right out the back window here. So if this campus does lose power, this building will not. So rest assured, we'll be able to continue our business. I have an announcement. Sitting to my right is Mr. Marcus Smith, the new Director of Capital Projects, and I wanted to thank him to the team in this committee. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. We've seen you around. You're a familiar face. You're back.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm sure you'll do a great job for us.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Yeah, and a little more about Marcus is he's been with the county for quite a while. He was over with Roger in the IT department, and I thank Roger as well for his support in this. So thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Okay, capital projects update. As you see from the last agenda meeting, as I promised, I was going to remove the items that were holding off due to the master plan to try to streamline this. Item B is not actually a resolution, it's an announcement. This is to memorialize the creation of an official mechanism in compliance with the Open Meetings Act when more than 2 elected officials are necessary to be in attendance beyond the already formed master plan project team. Sorry about that. The new subcommittee will consist of Chairman Mr. Caius, Board Member Mr. Froz, and Board Member Mr. Martin, and other elected officials as deemed needed or necessary.
Okay, so then I'll need a motion to adopt a resolution establishing County Facilities Master Plan Subcommittee of the Administration Committee.
I'll move it if it is in fact an actual resolution.
It is not just an announcement. I don't
just
believe
an
we needed
announcement.
an actual resolution for a subcommittee.
It's listed as a resolution here.
My error.
Nope. Okay, then by consent. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we've been,
Announcement.
we're well into the master plan review.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it kind of as an ad hoc group, and this just memorializes it, makes it official.
Okay, without a resolution. Great.
Correct.
Okay. And you have anything other than that as far as?
Not until further down the agenda, sir.
All right, then let's jump to information technology. Mr. Fonstock?
So we have 2 resolutions. The first one being related to replacement and hiring. So I'd ask for a motion and a second for that.
Okay, resolution. Can I have a motion and a second authorizing
Grams will
approval of
move.
personnel replacement hiring as needed for building management and information technologies department? That was who moved online?
Grams moved.
Berman second.
Gums and Berman. Okay,
So the resolution you have before you is related to the hiring freeze that is in effect, which essentially asks for building management and IT to go through the approximate 45 to 60-day process to rehire even entry-level positions that are budgeted and approved. So in the current climate of economics, we're seeing higher turnover rates. We actually had a person resign this week. So we're looking at hiring these people back. That particular position, in order to get it on agenda to hire back that one person, would take us not this cycle, but next cycle. So we would have 2 board cycles or 60 days before we could even offer a position. And with the turnover and the historical fact that, the positions are generally always approved for the rehires under the budgeted positions, we're asking that we get the approval to do the rehiring of existing budgeted positions based on this resolution. So that's what we're seeking, and it's more or less to try and hire people to replace these positions that have the turnover.
To be expedient about hiring them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, any comments from the committee members or questions for Mr. Fonstock? Hearing none, seeing none. May I have a roll call, please?
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford. Frost,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Caius,
Guys, yes.
passes.
Resolution passes. And then second resolution, I'll entertain a motion in a second authorizing the Information Technology Department to participate in Omnia Joint Purchasing Agreement. Motion by
Gums will move.
Gums moves,
Berman, second.
Ford seconds.
Okay, so what you have is a resolution to participate in Omnia Joint Purchasing Agreement. Omnia has an agreement with Amazon resellers, which Amazon is basically a reseller network or a reseller of many different business goods, commodities, and things like that. So we had, over the years, have been using Amazon to order and secure commodities and different items. And one of the questions is, whether or not they're individual purchases or they're collective purchases. This is just to simply acknowledge that while we participate in the Omnia Partners Joint Purchasing Agreement, we do spend about $15,000 to $20,000 a month through Amazon resellers for various offices and departments. And this is just to authorize those expenditures under the Omnia U.S. Communities Purchasing Agreement. This is something that the purchasing department themselves have participated in and have encouraged that we use the Omnia U.S. Communities contract. So what we're trying to do is connect the joint purchasing agreement to the expenditure level and get the authorization from the board for the amount spent. So we'd recommend approval.
Okay, any comments or questions from committee members? Non-committee members? Ms. Bates? Can you please speak into the microphone? And
Yeah.
What is Omnia?
So Omnia is a national joint purchasing organization. They're the parent company of U.S. Communities, and I believe they have a couple of other different joint purchasing agreements. So what they'll do is they'll work with states and other organizations to solicit a RFP nationwide to get purchasing agreements in place. So it's just large purchasing agreements that are multi-state.
So does that get us a better deal?
It generally gives us a better discount off of prices or shipping or terms. But yeah, it more or less is just helping us to get a vehicle to do the purchasing with following the competitive statutes and rules that are applied.
okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, seeing none, roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford. Frost,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Caius,
Guys, yes.
passes.
Thank you.
Resolution passes. Item 7, Mill Creek. Has to say anything from Mill Creek? Mr. Allen?
Mr. Caius, I have nothing further in this agenda.
Oh, okay. We have no vehicles to be dealt with this morning, I don't believe. Nothing in construction, because that would be you and Mr. Smith. New business. Resolution. May I have a motion and a second approving a purchase power agreement and lease for solar energy with, well, do we have a resolution this morning? Is that a resolution? Okay.
Yep.
Resolution approving the power agreement and lease from solar energy with GRNE Solar Field.
Berman move.
Berman,
Gums will second.
Gums is second,
Hi,
and yes,
I have
Ivy.
I have a presentation.
presentation.
Mhm.
Okay,
If you would like me to get to that first.
sure. Oh, you want to do that first?
Yeah, there's
Well,
a
you're
there's
up.
a summary of the resolution in the presentation.
Okay, that's good.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. for having me today. So I'm going to be presenting the solar power purchase agreement opportunity for.
I'm going to ask you to speak up just a little bit or get closer to the microphone if you could, Ivy. I
That
can't-
better?
Yes.
Okay. So today I'm coming to the administrative committee to ask for the approval of the solar power purchase agreement and lease for solar energy with GRNE Solar Field for a 2-megawatt field at the Judicial Center. The documents that are attached in the agenda are the power purchase agreement, the land lease, and a bid synopsis. The bid synopsis is a summary of all of the informal bid proposals that we received when we sent out an request for proposal in May. So that bid synopsis summarizes that GRNE Solar was ranked the highest in our evaluations. We are also working with Progressive Energy Group on this project. We have a representative here today, Arnie Schrammel, to answer any questions that the board members may have. And there may or may not be somebody from GRNE Solar on the line as well. Oh, thank you. And the last administrative committee meeting, I did a presentation on this project. So it has been brought to administrative committee prior to this meeting. And today we are asking for the approval of a resolution. I'll wait for the next slide. Can you go to the next? Oh. Hang on one second. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the proposed solar site. It is adjacent to the Judicial Center, is in the southwest corridor of that campus. We wanted to utilize non-developable land, and it is northeast of Peck and Brichter Road. We worked with the master plan committee to ensure that this project will not interfere with any future Judicial Center or parking lot additions, because the term of this project will be over the course of 25 years. Next slide, please. So last Tuesday, we held a town hall meeting to inform the public of this project and its whereabouts. And I'm going to give a quick little summary on that. So we had 19 attendants via Zoom. We had 5 attendants in person. And as of last night, we had 89 views on the recording on YouTube. So a decent amount of participation from the public. The main concerns, which were addressed during public comment already, but during the meeting, the main concerns were the chain link fence, the direct view of solar panels for neighbors. So the image on the right was submitted by the Camerons. That's the view out their window. And the decrease in property values was also a concern from multiple residents. During the meeting, we did have the CEO of GRNE, Eric Peterman, address this question. And he did send me some follow-up information. So
enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
So his remarks on the decrease in property values, they sent us 2 studies that were both done in counties within Illinois of property value assessments of folks who lived close to, or of the property values that were in close proximity to large solar fields. Those were confidential, so I could not post them publicly to this presentation, but please reach out to me if you are interested in seeing those. So both of the studies found no negative impact to the adjacent property that could be attributed to the solar farm within close proximity. The studies found that the property values could potentially increase up to 7%, but on average increase by 2%. So again, there was no negative impact from these 2 studies, but I'm still looking into more studies as well, so we can get a better idea and a better answer for the residents. And again, please reach out to me if you're interested in seeing those. Next slide, please. So some potential solutions that came of that town hall meeting, we are planning to work with GRNE Solar to upgrade the fencing that is facing Britcher Road to be more aesthetically pleasing. We will take into account the comment that was made this morning. We need to discuss that with GRNE and their engineering team and see what is feasible. Another solution would be the parkway trees. So working with Geneva to plant trees along Britcher Road. So some kind of meaningful landscaping. I know that that was a big concern. We're taking that into account. That would come at a cost to the county, but we could use potential savings from this project. Again, we are planning to work with the neighbors who are concerned. We want to make sure we are addressing all of their concerns and questions. And then lastly, one of our potential solutions was to include a sign to demonstrate the environmental benefits of the project, just to provide some kind of educational component. Next slide, please. So here's a quick summary of the power purchase agreement. The term is a 25-year agreement. GRNE Solar is required to remove the system at the end of the agreement, and they will perform all of the maintenance. Kane County purchases the electricity from GRNE Solar, and they own all of the attributes and tax credits and rebates that are part of the solar array. So they do the construction, they own the system, and they are responsible for system loss, should there be any. Next slide, please. The land lease, this is a land lease agreement summary. Again, it's a 25-year lease. GRNE is responsible for the removal of the system. Early termination by lessee, which would be Kane County. Should Kane County Board find that this project is no longer beneficial to the county, early termination would be acceptable in that circumstance. And also, should there be any kind of issues with getting to the interconnect at the site or any structural site issues, early termination again would be acceptable in that circumstance according to the land lease agreement. GRNE Solar is responsible for maintenance and repair of the solar field. And then currently, both the power purchase agreement and the land lease are still in the process of sorting out a few different items, including the landscaping plan. I know originally we were thinking about putting pollinator plantings underneath the solar panels, and we want to incorporate some kind of pollinator and native species plantings around the project site, but that plan is currently still to be determined. Next slide, please. So a quick summary of the resolution. We are asking today for the administrative committee to approve a power purchase agreement and lease for solar energy with GRNE Solar Field 05 LLC for a 2 megawatt solar field at the Judicial Center, which is subject to review by the state's attorney office. I did get in touch with the state's attorney after we had submitted the draft of both the PPA, which is the power purchase agreement, and the land lease. And her comments I can address right now. Oh, 1 second. So her comments included providing a copy of providing a copy of the notices to be sent to Civil Division attention, and the signatory to be changed to County Board Chairman, who will be approving the resolution. Additionally, the lease was marked confidential and proprietary. However, there were no proprietary terms according to the state's attorney. So they determined that the terms were standard and that should be removed, which has already happened for this draft. So other than those notes, the state's attorney determined that the terms looked fine. Moving on to why this resolution is important. It is an opportunity to create renewable energy infrastructure, promote energy efficiency and reliability within Kane County operations. These are all principles that are part of the Kane County long-term plans, the Kane County Energy Plan, the Kane County 2040 Plan, the Sustainability Operational Plan, the Green Building Policy. All of the benefits go to King County facilities. They reduce our dependence on grid electricity and lower energy costs. I know that these numbers were in the presentation during the last meeting, but based on the proposal that we received from GRNE Solar, our first year estimated savings, should this project be implemented, would come out at right under $200,000, $198,000 annually. And that would look like, should that number be correct or somewhere in that ballpark, at the savings over the 25-year life of the system would look like just under $5 million. And then with that, we would want to utilize the energy cost savings to reinvest in county-owned facilities to improve efficiency in operations and maintenance. The timeline of this resolution is presented today at Administrative Committee and will be moved to Energy and Environment Committee on Friday, and then the resolution will also be presented at Executive and County Board in September. And next slide, please. With that, my presentation is concluded. Thank you for the opportunity to present today, and I'm able to answer any questions at this time, and I can also call up Arnie Schrammel to answer any more technical questions the board members have.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Martin?
I have a couple of questions here. First off, I'm supportive of the project. I do think that I have a question about comments that were raised or during the comment section about this project being placed on a berm. What is the situation with and I know that ground out there is just inventory of old dirt, but what are we doing that relates to the berm?
So the project site is on it's on the southern berm, correct? The northern berm on that site. So we're planning to put the solar panels on the northern berm.
GRNE plans to cut down that northern berm by 15 to 20 feet, which would still exceed the height of the landscape berm along Britchard. And that idea would be to flatten that area because it's pretty steep side slope on the berm and provide a flatter plane to install the solar panels.
And I guess my other question just relates, I mean, I certainly agree with, working with the neighbors and trying to get landscaping and everything else, but should we be approving a final plan without the landscaping plan in place so that we know what we're approving?
The landscaping plan in the power purchase agreement has an allocation for landscaping between the solar panels. What we're mainly looking at in regards to landscaping is the long-term sustainability of those landscaping plants to make sure they're maintainable. The amount of solar panels that are being proposed are around 3,800 panels. And so to place some high maintenance pollinator plants around those panels for the next 25 years without the ability to burn would be very difficult to maintain those plants. So currently we're looking at the option of doing a 4A, which is a native grass around the panels, and then establishing some pollinator buffer areas that we would be able to burn over the next 25 years. And so the power purchase agreement does define an amount of funding for that landscaping, but mainly we're looking at longevity for the county and the ability to maintain those plants and really have a positive impact with those pollinators.
Okay, and actually I had, to your points, I had two concerns. One was and you kind of addressed it here. I had concern about pollinators interspersed with the panels. It just seems like it would be a maintenance nightmare. But to the point of the conversations today, what are we doing on the exterior of the project to buffer its visibility? And I'll make a comment that's just maybe totally gratuitous and incorrect. Having sightly fences, I mean, like picket fences or tall vinyl or something, to me, creates more of a maintenance issue and visibility issue than a well-maintained cyclone fence that's properly screened. So that's my totally uneducated comment, having just had a 6-foot-high vinyl fence installed behind my house by my neighbor. I'm receptive to what fences can do. But what are we doing on the exterior? And can we get some predictability so that we're not just saying, let's worry about it next year? I would like to have that plan in place as we approve this.
With this commitment from the county, GRNE is committing considerable funds to do the engineering on this project. And so we're giving them the authorization to go and expend those funds at their cost. And that's where those details will be flushed out. So we don't, until we know exactly where those solar panels are going, we won't know exactly what our area is going to look like to buffer the panels. I will say that given the elevations of the homes that the speakers are living in, that if they can see the berm today, that they're going to see the solar panels. If we try to lower the area and create a berm along Britchard and Peck, that's the direction that we're trying to get the sun from. That's the southwest direction and the south direction that we're trying to receive sun onto these solar panels. And so when you create a berm or obstruction, we're going to shade out those panels that are furthest south and have to push everything further north and higher onto that berm. So if the potential of putting a larger berm to try to screen these panels along Britchard just will not function with the location of the solar field. And so what we're potentially talking about is a buffered area of pollinators along there that would be 3-4 feet high. But I think for the residents' purpose is that we won't be able to screen these panels from their view.
What did I interpret correctly when you were talking about this, about about parkway plantings? That would be on the south side of Brisher Road.
Correct. The parkway panels with the setbacks from our zoning department would provide sufficient distance between those trees and the first set of panels that we wouldn't be shading out those panels. But the trees would not be mature immediately. We're talking about a 25-year lease. It might be 10 to 15 years before those trees are effectively screening any of
No,
those
I
houses.
understand that there's a growth time involved, but to me, it's the commitment and the effort that is relevant too. Do we have any accord from the city of Geneva or from the homeowners association or whoever the relevant governing body is to allow those plantings?
We could certainly address that with the city of Geneva. We had not had that conversation yet. We wanted to hear from the committee as to what your position on that was. And if we get direction from this committee that is something you would like us to pursue, we can definitely have that conversation.
Well, I'm one voice on the committee, but I would think it to be appropriate with the size of the field and the topography involved, that we in fact investigate putting the plantings on the south side of Brisher. And I don't know if that's
I would
sit
agree with
today in
that.
a timeline, but is that can we have that done before we vote on this? I don't know what we're talking about for timelines, and I'm never one to delay a project, but
I think the concern with the timeline is that with the federal credits that are available, and maybe Arnie can speak to this more, is that this needs to move forward in a timely basis. So we would like some direction from the committee on the resolution today, so they are able to start that engineering so we can meet those timeframes for them to get their credits.
and then how do we assure that we're going to address the issue of the screening with the city and have
We could
that behind
likely
us?
have a response quickly from the city before exec.
Okay, if we can have that before exec, then I'd be comfortable moving it ahead. It's the concerns in my mind are understandable. The benefit to the county is understandable, and what benefits the county benefits all of its residents also. So as I said, I'm supportive of the project. I just want to know that we've made a reasonable effort at on a long-term basis, making sure that this project will meld as much as possible into the into the neighborhood. So
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Froz, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a few things here. One of the speakers mentioned the concern with health. Now, I've heard no health concerns with solar panels, but I mean, if you could address that, I think we need to address it. We do have, that I know of, I think three, our animal control has a facility, and we've approved 2 or 3 of these. I know there's one in Lily Lake that's substantially larger than this, Plato Center, and out by Caneville. So I've heard no health concerns from any of those.
I was gonna say, I don't have the proper response to that, but I can get that information from Eric Peterman, who's the CEO of GRNE Solar. We did put solar panels on top or on the animal control building, and that concern was not, I don't think was brought up.
I think the request was for independent.
Arnie, can you speak to
Confirmation.
that?
Yes, please. I don't want health reassurances from the solar company. Please.
Well, can you speak to that at least, Arnie? And then keep in mind that if there are, or you can speak to where we can find independent confirmation of your.
Yeah, Chairman, this is Arnie Schrammel from Progressive. I'll have to get you some specific, I'm not a health expert on solar. I mean, personally, I got solar in my house, solar in my office building. So I hope there's nothing wrong because I'm living with solar 20 hours a day. But I'm not a health expert, so I'll have to get something back and maybe back to your exec committee or something.
Okay.
We can get a better response to the board.
No, I assume the answer is no, and I think the answer is no, but I think we need to address it since it was brought up.
But we'll get somebody that's health that can be authoritative to that question.
Okay. And then just quickly on the fence, just going from a galvanized chain link fence to a black makes a huge difference. Looks tremendously better. And lastly, and the most important for me, it sounds like there's I won't say urgency, but a need to keep this project moving forward, and I do support it. But if we do that today, do we have flexibility on the grading? As far as looking at some of the options for grading, if we can tweak it, or if we vote yesterday, is it locked in stone? The speakers here were just great. I like when people come in, they weren't saying, stop this project. They weren't saying this. They're telling us what their concerns were, and they were offering suggestions. And I think that really merits us responding in some way.
Yes, that's a great point. And we do want to be working with the speakers today and making sure that we address all of their comments and concerns that they brought to this meeting, which I can do. So currently, the open issues that are related to the power purchase agreement and the land lease are the final engineering. So today we're actually going to go out and do a site visit with a representative from GRNE Solar so they can walk along the site and look at the plans of the field and see where we do have options to put those solar panels and where there might be barriers. So the final engineering is subject to their whatever they're capable of doing.
I think the original 15-foot berm requirement that we've exceeded by almost double, that was to support the neighbors. So it sounds like the neighbors are here saying, maybe we don't need that 15-foot minimum out in the middle of the field. So maybe there's something we could do where we did a 5 or 10-foot berm to give the project a little bit of shielding close to Peck, and then make it flatter to the north. Because I know all the other projects I'm aware of in King County are on flat ground. So I know the slope gives you maybe a little bit better solar, angling, but most of them are done on flat ground. So if we were to make it flatter to the north and then a little bit of a berm, but I don't think there's any way we're going to shield it from their elevated positions. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's something that we can address with GRNE too and see if that is a feasibility, if that is possible.
So the grading is still in flux, and I would ask you, I would support this, but like Mr. Martin, I would ask you to keep working with the neighbors. They've been very reasonable and very reasonable comments.
And just for a point from the chair here, that this vote today means that we're committed to looking in and getting the engineering done. Without this vote, we don't get that formal engineering to actually find the solutions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then Mr. Ford, I believe you had a question or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, you just answered my statement about what we're trying to get done here today, and that is we need to get the engineering part done. I am for this project. I would like to see, if it's possible, a cross section across the land that shows the elevation where everything's gonna wind up from where the houses are, the street elevation, along with the elevations of the solar panels, so we can get some type of point of view, the berms and everything. So a couple of cross sections might help out to understand where everything's located at elevation wise. And I do understand that we may not be able to block enough of it because it defeats the purpose of having a solar panel if you're blocking out the sun. So that has to be taken into consideration. But I would like to see it move forward and get the engineering done. And then we can, once we find out the location, the best location for the panels, then we can work on the landscaping and everything else.
Okay. Then, Madam Chairman, Chairperson.
I have a question. Has a study been done in referencing to the input from the neighbors regarding the reflection and refraction of the solar panels? Will there be bounce off light?
Yes, so this was actually a question that we addressed at the town hall meeting. I believe that there's no kind of glare that the sun is going to have bouncing off of the solar panels. So they absorb the sunlight, but there's no bounce off of that.
Okay, and no heat?
Arnie, do you want to speak to the heat?
Yeah, that's correct. The solar panels are designed to absorb light. There's less glare on a solar panel than a standard new window. And two, there's no heat loss too. There's very little noise unless you're right up to it. The panels that they're speccing are actual tracker panels, so they'll move with the sun. They're single axle trackers, so they don't move like in December. They don't tilt different than they do in June. But they do move with the sun east to west during the day, very slowly.
Okay, very good. If I may, and just, I know that this goes beyond the scope of this resolution, but I do believe that we should take a look at a solar energy ordinance if we're going to be continuing our efforts to make Kane County's buildings appropriate. So is that something that we should address?
I can speak to that, and I don't believe Mark Van Kerkhoff is online, is he? So this has been an item that's been discussed at staff level, and certainly Mark Van Kerkhoff is the more appropriate person to speak to this. When we originally had many solar projects come through when the funding was available, we looked at the ordinances in the counties around us, and because solar use out in a farm zoned area is requiring a special use, it needs to go through the county board. And the challenge that we found with the ordinances in the adjacent communities and counties was that they locked that solar user into one set of regulations. And we found very quickly that we had a very different situation when a solar person was coming in to establish a solar site right next to adjacent homes versus in a large open farm area. We had one of each. One was in Plato Center, right adjacent to all the homes. And then we had one out on Lorraine Road, which was out in the middle of the country where we have a lot of quarrying activity going on. So with the special use process that the county has in place, we're able to customize those requirements depending on the location of the solar field that's proposed. And that frankly just worked out really well for us in those two instances because we were allowed to place larger requirements on the proposed fields that were located adjacent to homes. And we were allowed to place closer field locations on the ones that were out in the country that didn't have any other further impacts. This then also it was only effective when we actually had to go through the special use process, which would be for your F district farming. The property we're currently talking about is already zoned for that, so it wouldn't be going through our special use process. But when we're talking about those ordinances, as a staff, we felt like it was very effective the way that we approached it from the special use process.
Thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it.
Mr. Martin?
I know that the engineering will answer this question, but I seem to remember when we were scrambling around looking for dirt for the cross-country course on top of Settlers Hill, that we discussed that berm and that soil and and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I discussed it with you. Did we determine it wasn't construction grade dirt, that it was topsoil, or did we not know? I don't remember. And the question is, if it's not construction grade, how would that impact the engineering?
Mr. Allen may have a.
So we already have a solution built in. We have a current concern between the location of the multipurpose building and the JJC and the individuals that reside there being able to see that. There's some laws behind that. So I have earmarked any shaving down of any berms or that dirt to be used to build another berm at another location. Anything left over from that, obviously we can look at again, but we have need of that soil at this time.
I would also add that when the RFP went out, we did provide the soil information from the original jail to all the bidders. So they were aware that that was unsuitable material and they were to place their RFP to us regarding that with the type of foundations that would work with that type of material.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from Mr. Davist?
Like my colleagues, I'm very supportive of our clean energy efforts, and I love saving money, especially, large dollar amounts. But I heard some issues, and some of the answers regarding property values seemed a little bit vague to me. Assessors versus sales figures and a growth of 2% versus 7% were a couple of my quick notes. Landscaping that's not really finalized yet is of great concern. And then there's the berm that's the location for the actual panels, and a reduction in the height of that of 15 to 20 feet, which changes some other sight lines, which I think the chief judge would be very interested in, because that we built that up to that height for a reason. So as you reduce that, it begins to change sight lines into parking areas where judges park and that kind of thing. So there's a number of concerns here that I wish were further along, as Mr. Martin said, but I don't want to stop the project or stop the engineering, but I have a good deal of, concern about things that need to be finalized or get more focused before we can really say yes.
Okay, Ms. Molnick, you have.
I just wanted to clarify that the berm that we're talking about reducing is the northernmost berm, which was the spoil pile from the construction of the jail and the pond associated with the jail. The landscaping berm that went through the committee at the time that the jail was built is the southern berm. And so even with the 15 to 20 foot reduction in the height of the spoil berm, we're still above the height of that original approved berm for the screening of the jail.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your comments and concerns. So today we are going out to do a site visit with an engineer from GR&E Solar, so we can try to have those answers regarding the landscaping, regarding the berm grading, and the studies surrounding the health and security concerns before this item gets to exec.
Any other questions, Mr. Davist? Mr. Frost?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Mr. Ford said about, as you start this engineering process, that, even if they're very simple, I'd like to see some cross sections or maybe even options of cross sections, so that we can address the neighbors' concerns as much as humanly possible.
We can do that.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee or other board members? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, I'm going to call for the questions. Roll call, please.
Berman. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford. Frost,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Berman.
It passes. Great, thank you. Now, excuse me. Item B under new business is presentation by the county auditor. Penny Wegman, would you like to introduce your presenter?
Yes, thank you so much for allowing us to present our Verizon audit today. This audit was conducted by our intern, and he will be returning to school in a week and a half. So we appreciate the opportunity. So Ryan, your Verizon audit.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Audio good? Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, go to the next slide. All right, I'll get into a nice overview of this Verizon bill as well as the devices that the county is managing. Currently, the county.
Maybe just lean in just a little bit more in there.
Sure. Currently, the county is managing 858 cell phones and devices. This also includes things such as flip phones, tablets, watches, and MiFi cards. MiFi cards being wireless Wi-Fi devices. On average, this has cost the county $33,000 a month, and over the past year has amounted to about $395,000. All this information on these devices, including their charges and full detail on their usage, is sent to the county every month with this bill. That amounts to a nice 1,800 pages being sent over every month. This in mind, we had only audited the past 6 months worth of bills in the interest of time. With that, we had audited these bills for duplicate names, terminated employees, and the underutilization of the phones, as well as phones that were not being utilized at all. Next slide, please. So looking at current savings and potential savings, the current savings coming out of this audit so far came from the check for terminated employees. It was found that 2 employees' names were found with their lines still active at the time for the check, and those lines have since been suspended. That amounts to a collective $85 a month in savings. Potential savings came from the check for no use and limited use phones. Limited use here being defined as less than 50 minutes of talking per month or less than 3 minutes of talking per workday, and less than 25,000 kilobytes of data per month, or that is the equivalent to 2 emails sent with attachments and 3 minutes of web surfing per workday. For potentials, so for those potential savings, more specifically, we looked at the public health department. They had been occupying 39 flip phones, 29 of which showing no usage over the past 6 months and 10 showing limited. The removal of these lines would show potentially $1,000 a month in savings or $12,000 annually. More broadly, across all departments, for those limited usage and no use devices, if those lines were removed, we would see about $5,600 a month in savings and almost $68,000 a year. It should be noted that some of these lines could not be canceled even with no use or limited use due to public safety concerns. Next slide, please. Finally, we have our recommendations. Our first recommendation would be to prepare a Kane County mobile device use and management policy indicating responsibilities and requirements. This would be for all the departments maintaining the phones, the employees using the phones, as well as the ITD who help administer the phones and erase them upon department request. Our second recommendation would be to implement a monthly wireless device monitoring process. This would include departments going over and identifying their limited and no use phones, and then certifying their termination where applicable. With this, the ITD should work to produce a data usage report monthly for these departments and other devices. Finally, our last recommendation would be to implement and facilitate a formalized documented wireless inventory. This would be in the next 2 months and then should be done annually. We would be having this inventory to help verify that the existence of these phones as well as to certify current inventory records. Some information that should be provided on this should be the user's name, the type of device, their department, cost center, the cost of the phone, and the unique ID to the device. Finally, we would like to thank the Administrative Services Manager, Brooke, as well as the ITD for their assistance in this audit. I can take questions at this time.
Any questions from the board?
I guess this isn't so much a question, but maybe this is for Roger, but when you see an 1,800 page monthly bill, we can't realistically or humanly expect somebody to review that. So I would hope either with this company or any future companies that we would put that burden on the provider and we could give them certain criteria, pretty much what you used in your report.
Right.
That they would red flag these things monthly for us so that, we would be aware of them.
Yeah, when we had been discussing this with the ITD, there previously used to be a more workable format version that was in Excel instead of these long PDFs, but those have recently been taken away. So it would be suggested that they would work together to bring that back to make it a lot more easy to identify.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I had a question on the previous slide. It was there was a certain noted that some of the phones may not be canceled due to public safety. Any idea what percentage of the phones might not be able to be canceled?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information at that time, but I could get back to you on that.
Sure. Just curious. Sure. Any other questions, Madam Chair?
Well, just to follow up on that, if they're for public safety and they're not being used, they are being used for public safety, so they should be eliminated from the underuse count.
Right, we weren't able to easily identify them at this time, but that would be correct that those should be eliminated once identified.
Correct, because they are actively used.
Mr. Martin?
Nobody needs redundancy, but to repeat what Drew said, to me, it borders on absurd if we get a raw report that's 1,800 pages long that doesn't give us any data. I don't think that's am I wrong or is he wrong since it was his remark?
I definitely.
Is it wrong to have an expectation that we
Did
get?
you
that we
respond
get
to that,
more?
Mr. Fonstock?
So they are correct. The report is, excessively long. It does have detail for all of the devices. Much of the information that you're, talking about in inventory or what the usage is documented in those reports. We do review them periodically, quarterly, to try and find unused lines, unused services. A lot of that has to go back to the offices and departments for them to define whether or not that line needs to be maintained or terminated. And in addition to, kind of the vague term of public safety, you're talking about the sheriff. They may have MiFi and devices in the bomb squad trucks. Well, thankfully, they don't use them every day. They're very infrequent. But when they do use it, all of those gadgets turn on and they need to work. Similarly, we have things in the health department during COVID and the vaccination. We had lots of devices that were being requested, brought on board, being put into use or being kept on hand. A lot of that in the July bill was addressed. I know Brooke, she's here today, but I think the July bill was somewhere in the $29,000 range after some of the cleanup. The auditors report and some of the things that they were reviewing, I think helped us address some of the questions, but that's a ongoing battle because we don't independently act on phone service. We have to talk to the office, talk to the department. And when you're dealing with that many devices to get through that in a month, it's quite a bit of work. So one of the things that we had recommended from our perspective is if, we're going to apply more management to it, it's probably going to be more resources. And then the other part with regard to policy is that since we're not an independent authority on the phones, we would want to include maybe a policy subcommittee or a group of people that could help us with drafting what they see as a policy requirement. So those are just two of our points.
Thank you, Mr.
Sounds
Wilson.
like we could hire a $70,000 a year employee. Save us 68.
Sounds like good government. Oh, that was bad.
I would put the burden on the provider.
On the provider, yeah, absolutely. Well, this certainly is an interesting start, and you could stick around and study this more for us, but I understand you're going back to school.
I am going back to school, but also I will be continuing work with the county as a staff auditor part-time.
Oh, well, that's great. Good. Well, thank you for your presentation. If there are no other comments or questions for our presenter, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, item 11, old business, any old business? May I have a motion and a second to place the reports on file? Froz moves,
Have a second.
Ford seconds. Roll call, please.
Berman, Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford, Bras,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
passes.
I don't believe we have a need for executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Davis
Gums
moves.
moves.
Davis and
Gums will
Gums.
second.
Got those? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Next meeting? September. Thank you. Thank you for attending.